stopped. I didn't have any idea from the noise that it must have been New York City. You never were here before? Tucker asked. Goodness, no, said Chester. But I've heard about it. There was a swallow I used to know flying over New York every spring and fall on her way to the north and back. But what would I be doing here? He shifted his head uneasily, one set of legs to another. I'm a country cricket. Don't worry, said Tucker the Mouse. I'll feed you liverwurst. You'll be all right. Now go on with the story. It's almost over, said Chester. The people got off the train and walked away and got on another, even noisier than the first. Must have been the subway, said Tucker. I guess so, Chester the Cricket said. You can imagine how scared I was. I didn't know where I was going. For all I knew, they could have been headed to Texas, although I don't guess many people from Texas come all the way from Connecticut or go all the way to Connecticut for a picnic. It could happen, said Tucker, nodding his head. Anyway, I worked furiously to get loose, and I finally made it. When they got off the second train, I took a flying leap and landed in a pile of dirt over in the corner of this place where we are. Such an introduction to New York, said Tucker, to land in a pile of dirt in the Times Square subway station. Tsk, tsk, tsk. And I'm here, Chester concluded forlornly. I've been lying over there for 3 days, not knowing what to do. At last, I got so nervous I began to chirp. That was that sound, interrupted Tucker the Mouse. I heard it, but I didn't know what it was. That was me, said Chester. Usually I don't chirp until later in the summer. My goodness, I had to do something. I'm going to go ahead and stop right there, and I want you to tell me, what do Chester Cricket's actions so far tell you about what kind of creature he is? What do Chester the Cricket's actions so far tell you about the kind of creature he is? Well, so far we probably know that Chester is brave because he was able to get loose from the sandwiches and jump out of the basket. Even though he's far away from home, he has been all right so far in New York City. Chester is also nervous and frightened because he stayed in one place for 3 days while he thought about what to do. Now the cricket had been sitting next to the edge of the shelf. For some reason, perhaps it was a faint noise, like a padded feet tiptoeing across the floor. He happened to look down. A shadowy form that had been crouching silently below the darkness made a spring and landed right next to Tucker and Chester. "Watch out!" Chester shouted. "A cat!" And he dove headfirst into the matchbox. Harry the Cat. Now Chester buried his head into the Kleenex. He didn't want to see his new friend, Tucker Mouse, get killed. Back in Connecticut, he had sometimes watched the one-sided fights of cat and mice in the meadow, and unless the mice were near their hole, the fight always ended in the same way. But this cat had been upon them too quickly. Tucker couldn't have escaped. There wasn't a sound, and Chester lifted his head very cautiously, looking behind him. The cat, a huge tiger cat with gray-green eyes and black stripes along his body, was sitting on his hind legs, watching his tail around his forepaws. And directly between those forepaws and the very jaws of his enemy sat Tucker Mouse. He was watching Chester curiously. The cricket began to make frantic signs that the mouse should look up and see what was lording over him. Now very casually Tucker raised his head. The cat looked straight down on him. "Oh, him," said Tucker, chucking the cat under the chin with his right front paw. "He's my best friend. Come out from the matchbox." Chester crept out, looking first at one, then the other. Chester, meet Harry the Cat," said Tucker. "Harry, this is Chester. He's a cricket." "I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance," said Harry the Cat in a silky voice. "Hello," said Chester. He was sort of ashamed because of all the fuss he'd made. "I wasn't scared for myself, but I thought cats and mice were enemies." With that being said, let's go ahead and stop right there. How does Chester's behavior on page 702 show that he already trusts Tucker and values him as a friend? How does Chester's behavior on page 702 show that he already trusts Tucker and values him as a friend? Well, he tries to warn Tucker about the cat because he does not want his new friend to be killed. Now, when Tucker says the cat is his friend, Chester trusts Tucker and comes out to meet him. Now, with that being said, the next clue to go towards our theme is going to be that Chester tries to warn Tucker about the cat, and Chester trusts Tucker about meeting Harry. Okay. Now, in the country, maybe, said Tucker, but in New York we gave up those old habits long ago. Harry is my oldest friend. He lives with me over in the drain pipe. So, he was scrounging tonight, Harry. Not so, how was scrounging tonight, Harry? Not so good, said Harry the cat. I was over the ash cans in the east side, but those rich people don't throw out as much as garbage as they need to. Chester made that noise again for Harry, said Tucker Mouse. Chester lifted the back wings and carefully folded across his back with a quick expert stroke drew the top over the bottom. A thrum echoed through the station. Lovely, very lovely, said the cat. The cricket has talent. I thought it was singing, said Tucker, but you do it like playing a violin, with one wing on the other. Yes, said yes, said Chester. These wings aren't much good for flying, but I prefer music anyhow. He made 3 rapid chirps. Tucker Mouse and Harry Cat smiled at each other. It makes me want to purr to hear it, said Harry. Some people say a cricket goes chee chee chee, explained Chester, and others say treat treat treat. But we crickets don't think it sounds like either of those. It sounds to me as if you're going crick crick crick, said Harry. Maybe that's why they call him a cricket, said Tucker. Okay, now how does Tucker and Harry's reaction to Chester's chirping add to our understanding of the story's theme? How does Tucker and Harry's reaction to Chester's chirping add to your understanding of the story's theme? Well, both Tucker and Harry really like Chester's chirping, which shows that the friends appreciate the special qualities that he has. The author may be trying to show that taking time to appreciate others can lead to having good friends. And with that being said, let's go ahead and put that final clue as Tucker and Harry compliment Chester on his chirping. Now they all laughed, and Tucker had a squeaky laugh that sounded as if he was hiccuping. Chester was feeling much happier now, and the future did not seem nearly as gloomy as it did over the pile of dirt in the corner. Are you going to stay in New York? Said Tucker. I guess I'll have to, said Chester. I don't know how to get home. Well, we could always take you to Grand Central Station and put you on the train going back to Connecticut, said Tucker. But why don't you give the city a try? Meet new people. See new things. Mario likes you very much. Yes, but his mother doesn't, said Chester. He thinks I carry germs. Germs, said Tucker scornfully. She wouldn't know a germ if one gave her a black eye. Pay no attention. Too bad you couldn't have found more successful friends, said Harry. I fear for the future of this newsstand. It's true, echoed Tucker sadly. They're going broke fast. He jumped up on a pile of magazines and read off the names of half-light that slanted through the cracks in the wooden cover. Art News Musical America. Who would read them but a few long hairs? I don't understand the way you talk, said Chester. Back in the meadow he had listened to bullfrogs and woodchucks and rabbits, even a few snakes, but he had never heard anyone speak like Tucker the Mouse. What is a long hair? Tucker scratched his head and thought for a moment. A long hair is an extra refined person. You take an Afghan hound, that's a long hair. Do Afghan hounds really read Music America? Asked the cricket. They would if they could, said Tucker. Chester shook his head. I'm afraid I won't get along in New York, he said. Oh, sure you will, squeaked Tucker Mouse. Harry, suppose we take Chester up and show him Times Square. Would you like that, Chester? I guess so, said Chester, although he was a little leery of venturing out into New York City. The 3 of them jumped down to the floor. The crack in the side of the newsstand was just wide enough for Harry to go through, and as they crossed the station floor, Tucker pointed out to the local sites of the interest, such as the Nedick lunch counter. Tucker spent a lot of time there, and the Loft candy store. Then they came down the drain pipe. Chester had to make short little hops to keep from hitting his head as they went up. There seemed to be hundreds of twisting and turning and many other pipes that opened off to main routes, but Tucker Mouse knew his way perfectly, even in the dark. At last Chester saw light above them. One more hop brought them out to the sidewalk, and there he gasped, holding his breath and crouching against the cement. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. Now, how does the author show that Tucker and Harry value having Chester as a new friend? How does the author show that Tucker and Harry value having Chester as a new friend? Well, they offer to help him get back to Connecticut, but they also want to show him all the things that New York City has to offer. They seem to want him to stay. And with that being said, how would you summarize a tour of Times Square that Tucker and Harry gives Chester? So far, what do you think the tour is like? Well, first they squeeze through the crack in the newsstand and cross the subway station. Tucker points out the interesting places to eat, such as Nedick's and Loft Candy Store. Then they travel through the drain pipe, twisting and turning in the dark for a long time, until they come upon the sidewalk. With that being said, what is going to be the theme here? All these clues is Tucker is encouraging Chester to tell a story, and then Tucker listens to the story, and Chester and Tucker meet Harry the cat, and Tucker explains that Harry is his friend. Now, with that being said, the clue or the final theme here that we're going to say, or not, we wouldn't even say the theme, I apologize. Another clue would be that Tucker and Harry seem to want Chester to stay in New York. So you guys are going to actually have another clue space here, and instead of me making another clue space, I just want you guys to go ahead and write this in your next box, that Tucker and Harry seem to want Chester to stay in New York. And like I said, this would be in another box rather than the same box. Okay, let's continue to read so that we can figure out what the theme is. They were standing at one corner of Times Square building, which is at the south end of Times Square. Above the Cricket towers that seems like mountains of light rose up into the night sky. Even this late, the neon signs were blazing. Reds, blues, greens, and yellows flashed down on him, and the air was full of the roar of traffic and the hum of human beings. It was as if Times Square was kind of a shell, with colors and noises breaking into great waves inside. Chester's heart hurt him, and he closed his eyes. The sight was too terrible and beautiful for a Cricket, who, up to now, had measured high things by the height of the willow tree and sounds by the burble of the running brook. "How do you like it?" asked Tucker Mouse. "Well, it's quite something," Chester stuttered. "You should see it New Year's Eve," said Harry the cat. Gradually, Chester opened his eyes, and his eyes got used to the light. He looked up, and way far above them, above New York, and above the whole world, he made out a star that he knew was the star he used to look at back in Connecticut. When they had gone down to the station and Chester was in the matchbox again, he thought about the star. It made him feel better to think that there was one more familiar thing twinkling above him, amid so much that was new and strange. Now, with that being said, how does the author use his characters to express the theme or the moral of the story that he wants to get across? Well, the three characters are very different kinds of creatures, yet they have learned how to trust one another and care for one another. They see the differences between them as positive things and reasons to be happy together rather than as problems. The author shows how they speak to one another and respect and offer to help when it's needed. By seeing how these characters behave together, we understand how important good friendships are. Now, with that being said, our theme is going to be that friendships are valuable, and they make, and let me fix that real quick, are valuable and they make any place feel like home. Okay, now with that being said, that goes ahead and concludes this link for this story. If you have further questions or concerns about theme, do not hesitate to contact me, either email, phone call, office hours, or at the Learning Center.